Call the meeting to order. Just stick me through this and that. Pledge of allegiance.
Hey, I will. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that everyone is here with the exception of Aaron Unbehan. Mr. Board, has public notice been given?
Public notice has been given. We are working off of the revised agenda, which includes the CISA 3 contract and the summer food service staffing changes.
Thank you. Public comment for regarding policy 9500.02, naming of district facilities.
So whenever the district has a new policy, it goes through a set of 4 different steps. One of them is after the first reading, which happened at our May 13th meeting, is an opportunity for public to weigh in specifically on this policy and their concerns about this policy. There are no time constraints or limitations to it, but the comments do have to be specific to this policy. And then it would come back to the board later on. So, if there's anybody here.
Do we have anyone that's turned in for? Okay, thank you. And then our public comment procedures. If there's anyone wishing to address the board, please take a moment to fill out a registration form prior to the public comment being started. For policy 0167.3, anyone wishing to participate in the period of public comment must be a resident of the Richland School District, the parent or legal guardian of an enrolled school district student, or an enrolled district student. Persons wishing to participate must be physically present at the meeting and must register in advance. A total time allotment of 30 minutes will be given for public comment. Each participant will be given 3 minutes to address the board. A translator may be used to translate verbal communication to the board. If such translation services are used, 6 minutes shall be given to that participant, with only the first 3 minutes being designated to the total time allotment. Speakers are not permitted to make inflammatory comments, use inappropriate language or gestures, attack specific persons, or make a specific person the subject of their remarks. Please see policy 0167.3 for a complete list of requirements and restrictions. If a person is unable to adhere to these rules, they may be directed to end their comments. Do we have anyone from public comments? No. Thank you. Moving on to reports, number 4, District Administrator's report.
Okay, just 4 points here that I'd like to make. The first is kind of a recap from our May 13th meeting, just to let the public know if they did not happen to see it. After the board went into closed on the 13th, they came back out into open and selected a construction management firm for construction management projects related to the referendum. Nexus Solutions was chosen as the construction management firm, and so we will be starting the process with Nexus as we look at the design phase and then get into construction. Initial timing for construction is started in 2025, with the exception of the roof of the high school, which we're hoping to complete this summer. And future, an agenda item later on tonight's agenda talks a little bit more about roofing. All of the referendum projects are expected to be completed by the start of school for the 26-27 school year. So Nexus was chosen as a construction management firm. Then moving on to the end of the school year, just congratulations once again to our 2024 graduates, not only those here at Richland Center High School, but also those at our partner school and the Richland Online Academy as well. Marks kind of a unique milestone in their lives, and we wish all of those graduates the best in the future. Today marked the start of our summer hours at all of our buildings, including district office. Our summer hours are 7:30 to 4, Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 4, Monday through Thursday, and then 7:30 to 11:30 on Friday. So the big change being a little bit shorter day on Friday. All office personnel and administrators are just working modified schedules to be able to still get their 40 hours in and have a shortened day on Friday. And then finally, just a reminder to all of the board members, next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, so 9 days from now, on the 19th of June, that'll be our first committee meetings where we have all of the committees meeting at one time. So on the 19th, that's a Wednesday night, at 6 p.m., Personnel and Buildings and Property will be meeting. Personnel will be in the conference room, Buildings and Property will be meeting right here in this room. And then at 7:30, Curriculum will be meeting in the District Office Conference Room, and Policy will also be meeting at 7:30. They will be in this room as well. So all 4 committees will be on Wednesday, June 19th. And again, there's an agenda item on later on in tonight's meeting. Talks a little bit more about the committee schedules, but you'll see that that'll be the flow moving forward once a month, having all 4 committees on one night. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you. 4B, board member reports. So the Richland School District Foundation met on May 20th. The bulk of that was just making sure we were set and ready to go for the scholarship award night. The various different awards and scholarships that needed to be discussed were handled at that point. The outstanding alumni information that we're still working on getting some information together for that and being ready for that. So that was tabled until the June meeting. The policy committee met May 16th, and there were 3 policies, 8121, personal background checks, policy 5505, academic honesty, and 5410, promotion, placement, and retention. Those will all be acted on later tonight. And then we just completed personnel and negotiations committee meeting this evening at 6 o'clock. Went over meeting at a glance, reviewed last year, also discussed this coming 24-25 school year. There are some probationary clubs that we discussed that will be brought to the next board meeting. OPEB benefits, and then also the SBLA advisor compensation. Some changes are made with those. And those clubs will be brought, like I said, to the next board meeting for approval. Number 5A, approval of prior
We have
meeting.
more.
I'm sorry.
We have more
Okay.
activities. First, curriculum assessment and public relations met Tuesday, May 28th. That consists of Mrs. Dickman, Mr. Van Landijk, and myself. I am the chair. First topic was the reorganization, covered our meeting schedule, prior year schedule at a glance. 3 different policies that will either be discussed or acted upon tonight. The personal backgrounds check, the academic honesty and promotion, placement, and retention. Covered our district goals and priorities for the upcoming year, and then current schedule year at a glance as far as the once per month. 2 days later, buildings, property, transportation met Thursday, May 30th, consisting of Ms. Troxel, Mr. Dowden, and myself. I'm again the chair. Reorganized first, committee meeting schedules, prior year schedules at a glance. We had a request from a local landowner to discuss some possible easement access for logging rights. That'll be further topic for another day. Our vehicle replacement plan for 24-25 consists of 2 mowers that will need replacing, which do fall into budget. Number 6 was also later on in the agenda, driver profile review. That was recommended by the committee. We then talked about referendum projects, which we'll touch on at 10J, which is to hire Long Life Roofing directly, and Mr. Brian Jones will oversee that, and there'll be more discussion, and Mr. Gordon can likely elaborate later. And then lastly was our current year schedule at a glance. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hummer. My apologies. All right. Approval of prior meeting minutes for May 13th. Can I get a motion to approve those?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Dickman. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Troxel. Any discussion? Mr. Van Landijk?
Yes. Yay.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. 6A, approval of a statement of cash.
I move we approve the statement of cash dated June 4th, 2024.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Harmer. Any discussion? Mr. Dowd?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of invoices.
I move we approve Community First Bank General Checking Accounts checks number 86344 through 86417, ACH number 232401477 through 232401597, and EFT 202300100 through 202300107 for a net total of $1,059,238.59. This is for the purpose of general operating costs of the district.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Good.
Seconded by Ms. Stickman. Mr. Bosworth, anything to add?
Nothing in particular to add, just remember that the sheer number is due to the fact that we missed a board meeting at the end of May. But nothing really out of the ordinary to speak of.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Harmer?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Could I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Van Landijk. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Delva. Any questions or concerns? Ms. Troxel?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Brenda, could you please read through what those consent agenda items are?
Motion to accept the donation of 6 goats valued at approximately $600 from Ryan and Tiffany Lemke per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of funds for art supplies valued at $870 from Donors Choose per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of funds valued at $90 from the Richland Hospital per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of funds valued at $3,000 from Richland County Campus Foundation per policy 7230. Motion to approve the payment request of $2,500 to Dr. Dale Sinnott and $400 to Kay Taylor for the accompanying of our choirs and solo ensemble events during the 2023-24 school year. Motion to approve the June 30, 2024 committee fund balance designation to include a total of $60,000 for future HRA obligations. And motion to approve the 2024-25 CSA 3 contract as presented.
Thank you. On behalf of the school board, I'd like to thank Ryan and Tiffany Lemke, Donor Choose, the Richland Hospital, Richland County Campus Foundation for their generous donations. Can I get a motion to approve the modified agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Troxel. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Stickman. Ms. Stickman?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Number 9A, district vacancies and appointments.
Okay, so you'll see that there's a lot of positions that is pending board approval later on tonight's action or in the interview stages. We do have a few that are still open. We have a night custodian that we're still looking for. They could start immediately. We have an art and a math teacher that would be open for the 24-25 school year, as well as a part-time speech and language pathologist, a cross-categorical teacher, an alternative ed GED teacher, as well as some summer school positions. Those are the positions we have right now. Of course, this time of the year, it's a very fluid process, so we keep you updated as they come in.
Thank you. 9B, board committees and meeting schedule.
So you heard from the committee chairs earlier in the board reports, but this is the schedule that the committees will be following. Again, all 4 committees are meeting on the same night. These are Wednesday nights. It's the Wednesday preceding the second board meeting of the month. Our first kind of all super committee meeting night will be June 19th, Personnel and Buildings and Property at 6, Curriculum and Policy at 7:30. That general timeline will be followed throughout the year. Obviously, if there's something that we need to have somebody present at two different meetings and they're at the same time, we may have to alter any one meeting around. Obviously, we will post them accordingly when that happens, but this will be the general format that we will try to follow. And I did add all of the PDFs for all 4 committees. Now that personnel had met earlier, all of the year-long plans and schedule at a glances are attachments so that the public can see what each of those committees will be working on throughout the course of the year. Again, very fluid document. It changes every meeting, but at least it's a good outline of what will be happening.
Thank you. Number 9C, new policy 8121.
Okay, so this is a new policy, as Mr. Bailey just said. This is recommended by Neola to have a policy that relates to personal background checks for contracted services. And this policy addresses that whether or not they are being contracted directly through the Richland School District or they're working in the role of a subcontractor, that they agree that if they're going to have direct ongoing contact with children in the course of providing the services that they're being contracted for, that they are required to report any criminal charges that they have so the district can deem whether or not they should be in contact with children. That looks a little differently, whether it's somebody working on the roof in the middle of July compared to somebody who's in our buildings in the middle of October. But that's what that policy is. This is the first reading. Happy to answer any questions the board may have. This has gone through policy as well. If there are no questions or it's ready to go on, at the next board meeting we will again have public comment specific to this policy and then take action on it there. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Number 9D, new policy 5505.
Similarly, this has also gone through policy and I believe curriculum as well, meetings. So this is, again, new policy that Neola is recommending to have a better policy or have a policy centered around academic honesty for students and one that addresses the technology available to students, whether it be plagiarism or artificial intelligence, those sorts of things. And so this policy addresses that. Again, this is their policy that we are looking to adopt. Again, this has gone through curriculum and policy. It will be brought back again for public comment on this policy at the next board meeting.
E, 2023-24 goals and priorities update.
Okay, so this is probably the last update. I anticipate the board having some 24-25 goals and priorities here in the near future. They may piggyback off of these. They may be the same. They may be revised, but this will probably be the last update as it relates to the 23-24 goals and priorities. So there were 3 priorities, 2 goals within each one of those priorities. Priority 1 was making a connection with students and addressing their mental health. And one of the things that the district did was we conducted 3 surveys over the course of the year where students essentially stated for every adult in the building or at the district level, did they know the person? Did they feel comfortable talking to that adult? Did they know who they were but didn't feel comfortable talking to them? Or did they just not know who they were? And our goal was to make sure that every student had at least one adult that they felt comfortable talking to. And so when we did it in the beginning of the year, I believe we had 97% that felt that they were comfortable talking to someone. We were perfect, 100% in our middle of the year survey. Every single student had reported somebody that they felt comfortable talking to. In our last survey that we had done in May, we had 11 students across the district that reported that they did not have a positive connection with an adult. So whenever we get a number, we dive into it to see what it is. 9 of those 11 students were students who recently, and I mean very recently, since spring break, just moved into our district, and so they simply haven't had the time to make an adult connection. The other two of the 11 were students that our high school and intermediate and primary school principals are aware of, and they're going to, through the rest of this year, try to ensure that they felt comfortable, and certainly will be on our radar as they come in next fall. Priority number 2 was centered around staff, and one of the first things that we wanted to do was come up with a definition that defined what we felt a high-quality staff was. Going through committees, when I say committees, not board committees, but staff committees, and then through the various committees here, we had changed the terminology to be a distinguished staff member. This was brought to the board in March, but then we had elections, and in fairness to Mr. Van Landijk, we didn't want to just throw this on him to act on at the very first meeting, so we wanted some time for everybody to digest it. This has not changed since the board and the committee has seen it, but it is here, and it actually is the very next agenda topic to adopt this language as what we deem to be a distinguished staff member. Again, this has gone through various levels and has had overwhelming support at all the levels. And priority number 3 centered around our students and post-high school, getting them ready for college and career. In the red there, and this is new information, this was presented at least in part at our curriculum meeting. I was not able to attend that, so may have been summarized to some degree. We opened up our survey. We have over 200 people that have responded to it. It could be somebody who graduated in 1970 or as recently as 2023, and they were able to respond to how well they felt their preparation after high school was, and then break it down into different components. So these are all given scores out of a 5, right? The 1 to 5 would be how they responded, and then the averages are shown there. At the end of each one of those, I've summarized how I interpreted the data in terms of just generally speaking what it looked like. For instance, at the end of the first section, it appears the scores for preparation for post-high school plans trend lower in the more recent graduation years. So this is something that we want to make sure that we address, that our students now feel equally prepared for entering the workforce or post-secondary education as they did 10, 15 years ago. However, we do have some areas like fine arts that continue to have relatively high scores. Time management, work ethic scores have also seen improvement in more recent years, which I found interesting. And then that same is true for where we are showing excellence, where we need some improvement, and then just some additional comments that I had made there. This is all my words, and so you are free to interpret the data however you want. I tried to not inject opinion, but just say what I saw from a statistical standpoint. And then finally, we've been working with our CTE department in defining college and career readiness. A very brief version of that definition went to the curriculum committee, and then it was brought back in more in-depth. And one of the things that we did in defining college and career readiness was under each of the areas: academic proficiency, critical thinking ability, problem-solving skills, communication skills, willingness to learn, accountability, professionalism, and perseverance. Each of those categories tried to come up with an example, certainly not all-encompassing, but an example of what does this look like for a college-bound student to be successful as it relates to that area, as well as what does it look like for somebody in their career. So this is not ready for action. This is for the board to review, but we probably would look at a future board meeting looking at adopting this as our CTE definition as well. But again, happy to answer any questions related to any of those goals and priorities. I can tell you that I thought it was very helpful for me as an administrator to have clear direction from the board as what our goals and priorities were for the year, so that we can stay focused on working on this. So I appreciate that. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to action items, 10A, adoption of distinguished staff definition.
Okay, so segue into that. So this is the first action that we're looking at from the board. And again, this is just to adopt the language. Okay, what is, how this will be tied to anything in the future, whether it be pay or any kind of incentive. we will now be able to use this definition to say, if a staff member is deemed to be distinguished, meeting the goals of this definition, then we can do X, Y, Z. We're not talking about the X, Y, Z, we're just agreeing on what the terms are for a distinguished staff member, whether it be an hourly employee working in auxiliary service, or a teacher, or administrator, or anybody. This is what we are deeming to be distinguished or high-quality staff member. Again, this definition has not changed since the board and the committees have seen it last. Just looking for, I guess, official action on adopting this as our definition for distinguished staff in the Richland School District. And this did come on a recommendation from the curriculum committee as well. I don't know if they have anything to add.
I'll make the motion to approve the adoption of the distinguished staff definition as presented.
As a former teacher, I'll second that. I think this is an excellent idea.
Motion by Mr. Hunkemmer, second by Mr. Van Landijk. Any further discussion? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Action 10B, new policy 9500.02.
Okay, so this is the naming of district facilities. This is back for the second time for the second reading. If you remember that the last time it was brought here for some public comment, there were members of the community that were concerned on the grandfathering portion of it, and those facilities that had already had naming rights, specifically the Avitus Rip Field. That was brought back to committee. Those folks were invited. They partook in the committee and helped come up with a compromise. And so the one change that is now compared to, and this, let me rephrase it, this is exactly what the first reading was at the last board meeting. Okay, but from the last time that the board was going to take action on it, the one change is the grandfathering in, and that is in blue there, where it now states any board-approved naming rights in effect as of January 1st, 2024, which to our knowledge would only be the Avitus Rip Field, within the Richland School District shall be grandfathered in and subject to expiration on December 31st, 2056, unless terminated earlier, extended as per the terms outlined in the policy. That would essentially give the Avitus Rip Field 50 years of naming rights that was adopted in 2006, as opposed to the original 15-year expiration. So that is the one change that has been made. Again, those folks that expressed concern agree to this, and looking for the board now to take action and make it official. This did go to policy as well, so if there's anything that those folks would like to add, I'd welcome that as well.
Has it been determined, I know there was discussion, but have we decided that the green grass of the field is what is technically grandfathered, but the track and the facility itself are not Avitus Rip Field?
Can you say that one more time? But I believe the answer is yes. You're talking about the green grass inside the track.
Only inside the track
That is
will
correct.
carry this 50-year
That's my understanding.
Any other questions? I'd like to entertain a motion to approve policy 9500.02, naming of district facilities as presented, effective immediately.
I'll make that.
Motion by Mr. Hunter. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Ms. Troxel. Any further discussion? Mr. Van Landijk?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. 10C, revision of policy 5410, promotion, placement, and retention.
Okay, so state law says that every district must have a policy as it relates to promoting students from grades 4 to 5, and then as well as grade 8 to 9. And so this policy had been in effect. We adopted the generic Neola policy, but post-COVID, the previous policy said that a student must meet all of the following criteria, and there were 4 different components of that criteria. And exploring what other school districts have, we didn't necessarily want a high percentage of students that are being retained in 4th grade or in 8th grade. And so in looking at what other school districts have done, almost all of them have used the words meets one of the following criteria. And so that's how we have modified this policy. This has gone to policy and curriculum as well. That is the one revision, changing the word meets the following criteria to meets one of the following criteria for both of those. Policy or curriculum committee, welcome to add anything, or if there are any questions.
And you did state that DPI standard, this would meet their standard for criteria.
Correct. Yes. Thank you.
One of the things that we did discuss was that when the student meets at least one of the following criteria, instead of saying meets one of. So I'd like to make that adjustment to the approval. And the reason for that is, what it's saying is you can only meet one of the 4 different criteria. If you meet 2, then unfortunately you're not going to be able to move forward. Just strictly semantics of the letter of the way it's written.
So we're suggesting that only, one or more, and I suppose depending on the student and what their background is and, what the relationship is between the parents and school and whatever, I think this is important because that way it kind of opens up our ability to do something more than what we're restricted to. It takes away our restrictions. I would move that we adopt this. Is that appropriate?
Just to be clear then, with the revision of meets at least one of the following criteria in both
Correct.
of those locations.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Ms. Dickman. Any further discussion?
Does it have to come back for a second reading then?
Not just because it's a revision, it can be acted on here if the board is comfortable doing so.
Any other questions? Mr. Dowden?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
10D, resolution establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $15 million in general obligation promissory notes.
Okay, so Kevin Mullen from Baird was present at our May meeting, and he gave a presentation telling the board that this would be coming at the next board meeting. This motion is essentially to approve a resolution that gives the district some parameters, gives Baird some parameters for the sale of our first round of bonds, which would be up to $15 million in general obligation promissory notes. So that's what this is. We do have Jordan available here tonight from Baird, if the board has any questions. Jordan, do you have anything to add that the board wouldn't have already been aware of?
No, the only thing I would add is, I guess specifically gives the authority to the superintendent and board president. The whole purpose is flexibility of sale, right? So the other route would be you would sell it today, then you would approve it at the meeting tonight. You'd be beholden to your board meeting. This gives us the flexibility to sell it when we're ready and when it's a good time in the market. So right now, Kevin is planning on selling notes Thursday right after the Fed meeting, assuming that the market ingests the Fed meeting comments appropriately. But this does give you the flexibility to push it off if needed.
Is there a timeline that we have to act within? Is there a deadline to?
No. So all the documents are actually ready at this point. The district received the rating recently. The official statement is in place, which is essentially a prospectus, but for bonds. So the district is essentially in place right now. So just when we decide to bring it to the market, when it looks favorable, then we'll bring it.
What kind of information are we looking for from the feds to determine if we're gonna go forward with the sale or?
Yeah, so it's really that the market thinks that the Fed is being stable in their action and the specific wording. So as long as there's not anything surprising in which it might take a day or two for the market to fully ingest, I think it would more than likely be fine to sell on Thursday. The Fed's already been telegraphing that the first rate cut probably won't be till at least September, maybe 1 or 2 this year. So I don't see anything super surprising at this stage, but we'll have to wait and see.
Any other questions?
just clarification on Mr. Dowden's question. It's not so much what the feds say, it's how the market responds to what they say?
Exactly. Yep.
Is that accurate?
Exactly.
Okay.
Will the motion as presented, it specifies 15 million, will that mean that the next 12-ish million will have to come back to us to open that possibility up again?
Yeah, I'll let Jordan answer if I miss anything here, but when Kevin talked about there would be 2 phases of financing, one this year and one next year to avoid arbitrage, is that the correct
That's
word?
exactly right.
As well as to spread it out over one more fiscal year. So my understanding is we would not exceed 15 million this year. The remainder would be in 2025. And this sort of thing would come right back to the board at that point.
Exactly, yeah, so the same process would, the current plan is for that to be next year. The $15 million is what's called a small issuer exemption. School districts can issue up to $15 million in a given calendar year, and that allows you to potentially earn arbitrage on your investments, right? Because you're going to receive all these bond proceeds, and between receiving them and the expenditure of them, you can invest them. And we're in a unique environment right now in that you currently likely earn more on your investment than what you're paying on your bonds.
Any other questions?
Might I ask for an explanation of what arbitrage really means? I'm not familiar with that.
Yep, very good. I should have clarified that. So this is primarily because the bonds or the notes you're issuing are tax exempt, meaning the holders of these do not have to pay federal taxes. Because of that, the IRS has some say in the use of proceeds, the permitted use. Generally, if you do not meet any of these exemptions, including the small issuer exemption, they say you can't earn more on your investments than what you're paying on your bonds, right? That's arbitrage, right? You're earning more. You could essentially make money on the transaction by doing it. You can see why they think that it could get some issuers into issuing more than they actually need just to earn more money. But the exemption that you're working for is a small issuer exemption of no more than 15 million a year, which will allow you to potentially earn that arbitrage.
Thank you.
So again, just clarifying for my sake, so this is essentially, this would avoid a school district from issuing $100 million of bonds, earning the interest on it because interest rates are favorable right now, and then paying the bonds back off and then just keeping the proceeds. The IRS would say, no, you can't do it for that purpose. You can only go up to $15 million. Is that fair?
That's exactly right. You are unique in that this was approved by referendum, so it'd be hard to have a $100 million referendum when you don't have that many needs. But yes, that is the logic of the rule.
Is there a limit to how much can be earned during that period of time?
Not if you have this exemption in place. So other districts that are issued more than that, there are some other exemptions that you can try to do. There's a 2-year spend down period where you have to hit certain spend downs within a given 2-year time period. I know your project is, you said earlier, going out to 27, so it might be hard to hit that. So this will allow you to be able to meet one of those exemptions and earn more. So in the current environment, it is meaningful for school districts. And that earnings can go towards additional projects that fit within the scope of the referendum, or it can pay down debt early. Those are the only 2 permissible uses of the investment.
Any other questions, comments?
And finally, Jordan, what will the board see post today in terms of bonds? Will they see a final sale?
Yeah, so assuming we sell the bonds on Thursday, so we'll finalize all the numbers at that point. We'll complete all the paperwork, and again, only the superintendent and board president would have to sign the actual documents for the approval. And then we close the bonds, the transaction, roughly 3 weeks later. So that's when the district would receive the funds. So in the meantime, we will prepare kind of a wrap-up summary of the final financing, or the financing plan with the finalized numbers, and share some of the results. So Kevin will be sharing that, which I'm assuming will be sent around to the board members.
So if in 3 weeks, money is starting to change hands, where does that sit? Do we as a board move that to the local investment pool?
That would be our first strategy, and then Mr. Bosworth, I know, is working on getting some proposals from bond management proceeds companies on how they would be able to best utilize that. And I don't know where he's at with it. I don't want to put you on the spot. If you can speak to it, or what kind of a time frame we're on, is that something we could look at on the 24th?
It's possible. We're waiting on the draw schedule, and then we'll use that as our data to give prospective companies to give us proposals.
Or in July, whenever that would come to the board, and this is what we're going to do with it. In the meantime, we would put it in LGIP.
And by doing this way, that keeps the money in the community, right? That helps local, is that?
Not necessarily. It would allow us to start earning interest on that until we actually need to pay a contractor for the projects until we...
Okay, so in that way, it comes back to our community.
At that point, I suppose indirectly it could,
Anything further? Thank you, Jordan, appreciate it. So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $15 million general obligation promissory notes as presented. Can I get a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Van Landijk. Any further questions, concerns? Mr. Honerman?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
10E, fund balance purchase of reading curriculum.
okay, so this is coming as a recommendation from the curriculum committee. Our reading curriculum is very outdated, and with the state's adoption of Act 20, which is a reading law on what schools should be doing in terms of teaching reading. Dr. Johnson isn't here tonight to expand on that, but it has essentially forced us to look at updating our curriculum, which we needed to do anyway. And so by getting this curriculum and doing it the right way, this is going to be an investment of about $148,000, $148,330.60. We don't have that in our budget, and so the ask would be that we would be taking this purchase from our fund balance. Okay, whenever there is a purchase from fund balance, the board and only the board acts on that expenditure. It should be for a specific amount for a specific purchase. Just like if we had a construction project that was non-referendum that we needed to take out of our fund balance, that would have to come to the board. We have about $95,000 of remaining unearmarked ESSER dollars. Okay, that was set aside as part of personnel, I believe at the time. It's been sitting there, it's earmarked. Technically, because all of the ESSER dollars have already been claimed and received from the government, technically it's not ESSER. We're referring to them locally as ESSER earmarked dollars. They're technically part of our fund balance, right? We claimed them in 22-23. Now they're sitting in our fund balance, okay? So, but we're still earmarking that locally as ESSER earmarked. And so the ask is that we unearmark that $95,000, okay, or apply the ESSER dollars to this purchase, and then the remaining $52,000 be taken from our general fund balance. That'll help us clean up our internal accounting and not having to just continue to drag this ESSER dollar out there. Because the reality is, if there's something that the board really wanted to do with fund balance, they could do it without it being ESSER dollars, right? So it'll just clean up our internal accounting. Essentially, we would be taking $148,330.60 from our fund balance to purchase this new reading curriculum and be implemented for the 24-25 school year. So that purchase would happen soon if approved by the board. Our fund balance is very healthy. We just went through our credit rating with Moody's. Our credit rating stayed the same for our bond issuance, And again, one of our strengths is that we have a good fund balance, so this should not impact that in any negative way. But we are spending $150,000. Mr. Bosworth, anything to add from a monetary standpoint? Curriculum committee, anything that I missed?
The one thing that I kind of pointed out and seemed to have been agreed upon was because of how question 1 and question 2 of the referendum played out, the things that those ESSER dollars were earmarked for being personnel, which was intended to be more wage increases, well, technically, that has been resolved now through question 1. And so now they're just floating dollars. One thing that Dr. Johnson had mentioned, with structuring it in this way, there is also, I believe she said, social studies has some updating needs on the back end where she can use her actual budgeted money that still is in the bank and almost kind of knock out 2 subjects potentially at one time in what could be seen as a $53,000 fund balance dip in if you kind of keep that earmark of ESSER in mind. So it seemed like 53,000, you get 2 subjects, that we can probably do a lot with this one vote, so I think we were all in favor.
Can I get a motion to approve the recommendation from the Curriculum Assessment and Public Relations Committee to spend the remaining ESSER earmarked allocation toward the purchase of new reading curriculum with the difference paid from the fund balance, resulting in a net total of $148,330.60 to be spent from fund balance?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Van Landijk. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Dickman. Any further questions, discussion? Ms. Troxel?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
10F, Dane County New Teacher Project Contract.
Okay, so and again, this is coming from, did this go to the curriculum committee? It did not?
Oh,
One
unless I
one not and one no. I was not there. I think it may have initially, maybe when she was looking at changing the mentoring program, but maybe not the last one. Does that sound right? Okay, regardless, there is a potential for us to get a grant through this. We do not have the grant yet. We do not know if we're going to get the grant. We're anticipating getting it. But Dr. Johnson is trying to get all of our ducks in a row so that if that grant does come in, this is ready to go. This is the contract for the Dane County New Teacher Project. This is how we would mentor our new teachers. I know it was pulled from consent when she had the initial ask, and so I've pulled it off of consent and allow board members to discuss it here under action items. I can try to answer any questions, and if you're not comfortable, I'll get you some answers.
Do we know how many hours or what the dollar amount would be for the mentoring? Or allocated anything specifically?
The only thing that I know is that it would be funded by the grant. And so if those dollar amounts would not exceed that grant. Let me just see. It's a consortium of a bunch of school districts.
Looks like $7,233.60.
That is correct. $7,233.60 would be our on the hook. And I believe, Dr. Johnson, this is what she wants to do for our new teachers, regardless of the grant goes through, but this consortium will allow us to be grant funded. Again, it's my understanding on that.
Thank you.
So is this a full-time position that we're helping pay for this chairperson, or is this just a few hours a week? I guess the breakdown, I'm seeing a huge dollar amount for a chair here, and I have a hard time paying for an organization that is very limited.
The chair being the 120,000 that you're seeing there?
Yeah.
Would be salary and benefits, so yeah, it would be for a full-time person. And actually, there's a project manager in there as well. That clearly isn't a full-time position, but But yes, it would include all of those things, making up that $199,000.
And those would be local positions, or would that be,
No. Be housed by this organization. This would be very similar to CISA, right? It's just going to be, we're just paying a fee and we're getting these services. We have traditionally done our new teaching mentoring through CISA 3. I think Dr. Johnson's believing that this would be better onboarding for our teachers. A better experience, getting them better prepared.
So I'm looking here, at number 2, this employee will be housed in the Wanakee School District, is that on there?
That is correct. They will be the fiscal agent, so I'm guessing that that's where they will be the majority of the time as their home.
Yeah, both the chair and the project manager are Wanakee.
Again, this would not be, I mean, I understand Wanakee is getting a new position, but it would not be that different than what we do with CISA, right? CISA hires somebody and then we get some of their services for it. It's just not through CISA.
I guess before I vote an affirmative of it, I would like to see a breakdown of what do they offer that CISA doesn't, for comparison's sake.
Something the board would look to postpone until the 24th when Dr. Johnson's back, or not the feelings of the full board?
I guess my question would be, so if this is kind of replacing what we had with CISA, what was the cost that we were paying CISA? I mean, do you know what that would be or what it was?
Off the top of my head. Let's see if I can. You know, John? Any idea? Sean? I'm going to look at the CISA contract.
I guess I'm just I'm trying to figure out what we get from this money. We get these services under Exhibit A for how many people in the district? This is for every new teacher, for mentor teachers?
I will fully admit this is a Dr. Johnson question.
Okay.
It looks like it's savings of $5,200 from our CISA contract that we paid $5,000 last year. It would have been $52,000 this year. We took that off the 24-25 contract and instead would be replacing it with this. So about a $2,000 difference from the curriculum budget.
Thank you.
As far as the details, I'm not sure I'm best suited to answer that. It's just Dickman.
Okay.
just ask the general question, are most people wanting to get more detail, more information before acting on this? If so, then we can just table this to our next meeting.
It seems at our last meeting, the curriculum meeting, she spoke to us, right?
It's not ringing a bell on this particular
It seems to me
topic.
that what she had to say made sense, but I think for the entire committee it might be important, so maybe we postpone until she's here to actually represent what it is that's here. I think we should probably wait. Is there any time limit on this?
I would find it hard to believe that 2 weeks would matter. I don't see anything in the contract that they would need to know an answer by. Just talks about the invoicing.
As long as we're not hurting ourselves
They
by
wanted to
delaying
return
this.
contract back by May 31st, so. Fine, postponing it. If there's a motion and there's a second, we can act on it. Or we can just, if there's no motion, obviously that makes it easy.
Would
But
pass
if
by
we
consensus,
specifically-
everybody agrees, or?
If we, yeah, as the standing president, if you just make the initiative to just postpone it to the 24th.
Yep. Well, I'll recommend that we postpone the Dane County new teacher project contract until June 24th, when we have some more information available.
And then specifically, what information are you looking for?
Comparison from what we were getting with CISA to what we're getting with this organization, and a clear outline of what we are getting. Is it limited or is it unlimited?
And if we were to go with this, would that cancel CISA then?
Just
Is
that
it
particular
one
service.
or the other, or will it be a combination?
No, we would not contract the services with CISA for the new teacher part.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose we could do both, but then you're double paying.
Yeah.
So as it stands now, are we still under contract with CISA until June 30th? Since in this case,
Correct.
they cannot take invoices, they cannot cash our check until July 1st.
We've paid for the 23-24 CISA services, so we will have those services through June 30th. And if we could always add it on to the CISA contract as well. We make changes all the time, so. I mean, this is a good time to be talking about it because we're in the middle of summer. We're not necessarily doing a lot with this. So I don't see any reason why we can't wait 2 more weeks.
Well, the only reason I can see is it does look like it's broken down by school district. So if we pull out, it looks like it's going to affect other people's amounts of money. Is that how everyone else understands this?
Yes.
So if we don't pay our 7,000 from that 5th page, and that's gonna leave them in a $7,233.60 deficit.
I do think that there's something to be said for if this is what Dr. Johnson believes is the best way to support our teachers in our new mentoring program. She's the expert on the subject, and unfortunately she's not able to be here tonight, but I do believe we have to give her the tools to make sure that she's successful in helping our new teachers be successful. And if she feels that this is a better model than CISA, then, or at least as I would feel comfortable based on her recommendation moving forward. But ultimately it's the board's decision.
I actually agree, Mr. Board, and I would make the motion, I know there's a current motion standing, that we would accept it, but I would like to hear from Dr. Johnson on why she thinks that this $2,000 is better spent with them. I just am interested in that information.
Curriculum committee or board?
I'm sorry.
At a curriculum level?
Sure.
Or start there and then see?
Sure. Well, maybe at full board, since it seems like a lot of people have those same questions. But I also agree that we should trust our administration, that they've done their diligence and they're allowed to take vacation. So they can't be here at every single meeting.
Is that a motion?
It is.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept the contract with Dane County New Teacher Project for the 24-25 school year and the peer mentorship grant funds to fund the work. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Huntermer. Any further discussion? Ms. Dickman?
Aye.
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 Hey,
Aye.
Aye.
10G, special education staffing changes for the 24-25 school year.
It's 5-1. Okay, so special education staffing is a very fluid beast as we have students move in, move out of our district and have varying levels of needs and disabilities. And so there are 2 asks to this staffing change for 24-25. The first is the special education aides that we add 3 positions. These would each be for 1.0 FTE term position. They would be located here at the high school, or at least that's the expectation, within our intellectual disability classroom. If you remember, we added a teacher to this. Our numbers continue to increase, and we have had an influx of students move into our residents that are in the ID classroom. I believe that we had 6 move in about a 2-week period, okay? And so we are in need of some additional aides for next year. The estimated cost for those 3 positions would be just under $160,000. However, I think it's important to note out that when our revenue limit is established by the state, there is an exemption on there called transfer of service, and it is meant specifically for this situation. When there is a student that moves in from another state, another governmental body, foster care, those sort of things, or another school, if it requires our school district to have an additional position, if there's an increase in cost to service that student, we can tack that on, one-time opportunity to tack it on to our revenue limit. And so this would be offset in the revenue limit next October. And so as far as a budgetary standpoint, we would get an additional $160,000 of revenue, and we would have the $160,000 of expense, so it would wash itself out. So there'd be no impact on the budget. That component does get added on to our levy, okay? So essentially it does fall on the taxpayers, all right? However, in our conversations with Baird last week, Mr. Bosworth and I, that small portion added on to our revenue limit, and the increase in aid is likely to be more than enough to offset the increase, okay? So we don't anticipate there being an increase to our property tax owners with this, okay? Just want to make that clear. But this is the only time we can do it. If we would wait till next year, see how it goes, we may still need the 3 aides, but we would not be able to add it on to our transfer of service. All right. Mr. Osem, do you have anything to add as it relates to that first revision and transfer of service that I may have missed?
No, that was a good summary.
Any questions on that one before I confuse you and go to the next one?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So what happens if a bunch more special ed students move into the district next week? So we can only do this one time?
No, there's a window, and so but you can only do it in the window where they move in. So if they move in next year, or next week, in your hypothetical, and it requires additional services, maybe it's a student with a visual impairment, and we have to hire somebody that can do X, Y, Z to help that student, that would still qualify for a transfer of service. If they moved in December, it would qualify for the next year's transfer of service. But what we can't do is start educating them
Okay,
outside of the window and then apply for it the next year.
okay,
Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay, so hearing no questions with that. And then the second ask is that it's really more of a reconfiguration. So we have, I guess technically, a couple of unfilled aide positions in our cross-categorical department at the Richland Center Intermediate School. Those 2 positions are vacant right now, so this would not affect any one person and their job. The ask is that we not replace those 2 aides for 24-25, and instead replace them with a teaching position, very similar to what we originally thought we were going to do up here with the ID position. So not fill 2 aides that are currently vacant, and instead replace it with a teacher. The estimated cost savings is very, very minimal. It's about an $8,000 savings. That could vary a little bit depending on where the teacher themselves are at on the pay scale, but even at the most, it would not be an impact negatively to the budget. It would only introduce more of a savings. So that's more of a reconfiguration of aides. And the reason we can do that is because as students either depart the district or move up to the next level, the staffing may or may not be in place, okay? And so with the students that Mrs. Brown will have coming into the intermediate school, we can meet the needs of those students better, all of our students, with a teacher as opposed to an aide that may be assigned to an individual student or students. Again, Mr. Josem, did I miss anything with that you want to add?
I would only add that I'm sure the board is aware of our incoming third grade class. And so meeting with Lisa and special ed staff, we thought that we could probably meet their needs more appropriately with what teachers are able to do versus aides. I mean, obviously aides cannot provide instruction. And so cost savings is great, but also we're meeting the needs of these, especially this incoming third grade class, which we've always heard of this year because of the behavior. And so our hope is we can find a great quality teacher that can help us meet those students' needs. Isn't that great?
So those two revisions to special education staffing for 24-25 is what we're looking for the board to take action on.
Can I get a motion to approve the special education staff changes for the 2024-25 school year as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Troxel, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dudley. Any further discussion? Aye.
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 10H, change to the summer food service staffing.
Okay, so this was one of the revisions to the agenda. Today was the first day of our summer food service program. I believe pickups for the week are going to be on Thursdays of each week, starting this Thursday. As word has gotten out there, those numbers just continue to increase. Just for reference, last year, summer of 2023, the food service department prepared meals for about 575 students. And as of June 5th, we were at 683 for this year. I don't know, Mr. Bosworth, again, do you have any update on numbers?
We're just short of 700 as of today.
Okay. So we have, almost 125 more students that we're preparing essentially 10 meals a week for, breakfast and lunch.
Actually, 14.
Weekends as well. All right, so 14 times 125, you do the math on the number of meals that we're preparing. We had made some changes to food service already. We have 3 full-time positions, and then we had the approval to hire a 12-hour-a-week position. The proposal here is that we could increase that 12-hour-a-week up to 36 hours a week at their hourly rate. That would be at the discretion of Mr. Bosworth and Mrs. Pretch. If they start to get into an efficient mode and we only need them here for 28 hours or 30 hours, then that would give our directors and administrators an opportunity to trim those down. But we do want to make sure it gets off to a good start without any hiccups, and so we probably would err on the side of having a few more hours these first couple of weeks and then trim it down as needed and see where those numbers are. Mr. Bosworth, did I miss anything that you want to add?
Nope.
Any questions from the board?
Just to confirm for those who may not have heard it, generally speaking, the food service is budget neutral. Is that an accurate statement? If not profitable, and so this should have no impact on our fund balance?
Great question. As a whole, our food service operates in the black, okay? However, because of our summer food service program and the success of it, that is really one of the driving factors of us being able to operate in the black as a whole. So by enhancing our summer food service only adds to the area that is really been profitable and beneficial. So it should help.
Great. These are reimbursable meals. Can I get a motion to approve the staffing change for the summer food service as presented?
So approved.
Motion by Mr. Van Landyck, a second.
Yep.
By Mr. Hunter. Mr. Van Landyck?
Aye.
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 Aye. 10I, revision to the driver profile criteria.
So you may recall in, I believe, March, perhaps early April, came to the board, we had switched insurance carriers for our automotive, and to Wright Specialties is the name of the company. Mr. Coy came and gave a presentation at the Buildings and Property Committee level, and I believe he was even here for the board level. We approved those changes. The new insurance company has some slightly different changes to who they will cover when it relates to folks driving our district vehicles. And so this is a reflection of that change. There are some relatively minor revisions to the driver profile criteria. This would be true for whether it's a staff member that wants to drive our district vehicles, or a coach, or even in some cases, a parent. They all go through the same process. They submit their driver's license and form. We look up their driver profile through DMV, and then we would use this proposed rubric to determine whether or not they are able to drive a district vehicle and be covered by our insurance carrier, or if we would deny them. So this is in line with what our insurance carrier has provided. They have also looked at it. It's been vetted by them as well to make sure that we didn't miss anything, and it's a go. Happy to answer any questions, or Buildings and Property if you have anything to add.
Can I get a motion to accept the recommendation of the Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee to approve the revisions to the driver profile criteria as presented?
I so moved.
Motion by Ms. Dickman, a second. Mr. Devlin? Mr. Devlin?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
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 10J, approval of roofing contractor.
Okay, last but certainly not least, so this is also coming as a recommendation from the Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee. After the board voted to have Nexus Solutions become the construction management firm, we were asked by Kramer Brothers, who was scheduled to do the remainder of Phase 2 of the roofing. This was non-referendum dollars, Phase 2. Part of it got done last summer. The rest of it was scheduled to be done this June, subcontracted through Long Life Roofing out of Wisconsin Dells, who has done the vast majority of roofs, if not all the roofs that are currently on our district-owned buildings. Kramer's had asked if they could terminate the contract and allow us to just either work with Nexus or go directly with Long Life Roofing. Brian Jones and I, and Mr. Bosworth, have had conversations. We've talked to Long Life Roofing. The amount of money that we still would owe Kramer Brothers for work that they did last year but was not invoiced, which is just shy of $50,000, $47,236. We would pay that, and the amount of money that we had allocated is still about $49,000 less. The cost, I should say, is about $49,000 less than what we had allocated for roofing if we worked directly with Long Life. Okay, so the ask is that we terminate the contract with Kramer Brothers, pay them what we owe them, the $47,000, and then contract directly with Long Life to do Phase 2 for the roofing, which was going to be taken out of budget. We had already set aside those dollars. In addition, then, as part of the referendum, we needed to complete what we called Phase 3 of the roofing. Phase 3, if you look at that little picture, is everything there in yellow, which is essentially the entire middle of our high school, the entire academic portion, excluding the area that you're under right now, and the tech ed department, which was part of that Phase 2. Phase 3 was part of the referendum, and so those will be referendum-funded dollars. And in January of 2023, Long Life, as well as all the roofing contractors, they submitted a bid. Long Life submitted a bid for just a little shy of $566,000 plus installation for completion of Phase 3 of the roofing. And at that time, we had asked the contractors to put that amount in there because we may use ESSER dollars to fix the roof. Okay, well, we decided not to do that, but we did contact Long Life, and they said that they would honor that price that they established in 2023 if we can do the roof this summer. And they can fit it in to their schedule. And so in summary, the ask is that we would contract directly with Long Life to complete Phase 3, which is referendum-funded dollars, for the roofing here at Richland Center High School. Our entire roofing will be done by the time school starts, barring any unforeseen circumstances. There is the insulation cost of $2.74 per square foot on the areas that need to have insulation replaced. That cost is going up 6.5% later this week. And so if we can get the approval from the board to move forward with that, they can lock in that price with the insulation and save us a little bit more money. So full summary, Kramers would not be completing Phase 2 of the contract. We would be terminating the contract with them, pay them what we owe them, work directly with Long Life to complete Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the roofing. A side note, Nexus has said they're more than okay with this and that they would help in any capacity if we need a final walkthrough with their people. Otherwise, Brian Jones and his crew would kind of oversee this independently. But we do have the support of Nexus on the back end. Any questions? Mr. Bosworth, anything I missed? Buildings, okay. Buildings and property, anything I missed?
I'll keep my personal opinions to myself, but I think it would be fair to say that our committee is excited to work with Long Life and Nexus moving forward.
It's okay. I get a motion to approve the recommendation of the Buildings and Property and Transportation Committee to accept the Kramer Brothers' request to terminate the contract for the uncompleted parts of Phase 2 and to contract directly with Long Life Roofing to complete Phases 2 and 3 of the high school roofing for a total of $790,410 plus insulation replacement as needed at $2.74 per square foot, pending coming to the proper contractual terms with all parties.
I would love to make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Huntermer. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Ms. Troxel. Any further discussion? Mr. Huntermer?
Aye.
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 I move that we go into closed session pursuant to section 19.851C, E, and/or F, and of the Wisconsin statutes 118.125 to consider employment, promotion, compensation of employees, discussing individual employee hiring and administrative evaluations, and to discuss individual student discipline and student open enrollment applications and individual pupil information related to those applications. The board may take action on these items in closed session if necessary and appropriate. At the conclusion of the closed session, the board will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Van Landijk. Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.